Very good morning to all our dear listeners and viewers. Welcome to yet another edition of Acfim Talks. Today, with me, I'll be introducing. I have a three-panel cast, and I'll be introducing them in a short while. But we're discussing the Kenya presidential election petitions. Exactly what is the place of the judiciary in the African democratic processes. And as we discussed that, you all know that in the neighborhood in Kenya, we've just had an election. We've also just been following the election petition, and we now know the outcome of the petition. And I think next week we will be having the president-elect inaugurated as the fifth president of Kenya, Dr. Ruto. But before we get started, allow me to first of all welcome everybody. If you're joining us for the first time, please hit our YouTube account. We are live on Facebook, on Twitter, on also live on our YouTube account, Acfim UG. You'll be able to get the notifications, and also you'll be able to catch us live same time, same place. My name is Felix Kafuma, who's going to be taking you through today's discussion. And once again, you are most welcome. With me, I have Dr. Daniel Weza, who is a law don at Makerere University, and also is also the adjunct professor at Uganda Military Academy. Dr. Reza Daniel is teaching constitutional law at Makerere University, international law, treaty and law of evidence. You are most welcome, Doctor.
Thank you very much for having me. I hope you can hear me.
I can hear you and you're very clear. It's good to have you on the set. Also joined with me, I have Robert Okot, who is an advocate at the High Court, and he's also a member of the Uganda Law Society, a member of the East Africa Law Society and Network of Public Interest Lawyers, NETPIL, has worked with National Democratic Institute for International Affairs, also worked with Acfim, and since then he has developed a niche in non-profit law and political finance regulation. Council Court, you're most welcome.
Thank you very much, Felix. I'm also glad to be part of the same panel with my former lecturer, Dr. Daniel Ruiz.
Great. I'll be joined by Charita Himbisiwe. He should be joining in very soon, who is the electoral democracy expert and current executive director of Electoral Law Institute. She's also the former executive director of Citizen Coalition for Electoral Democracy in Uganda, commonly known as CEDU, and she observed the elections in Kenya. So when Charity comes in, I'll give her the honors and I welcome her on the set. But before we get started, allow me to provide a context of why are we having this discussion, and also to help anybody who's just joining us for the first time. What exactly are we discussing? Remember, this show is brought to you by Alliance for Finance Monitoring, the political finance watchdog in Africa. And it happens every Friday between 11 to midday. We started a bit late, but I'm sure I shall be able to catch up. Now, before we get started, let me do a bit of justice here, or what I would call an exegesis of why are we having this conversation on what is the place of the judiciary in the African democratic processes. If you've been following the developments in Kenya, you know that, or you know by now, that next week on Tuesday, which will be the 13th of September, 2022, Dr. Williams Samoei Ruto will be sworn in as the fifth president of the Republic of Kenya, following the judgment of the Supreme Court of Kenya that upheld his victory. And on this occasion, we know that Dr. Ruto has invited over 40 heads of state for the swearing-in ceremony, including our own President Yoweri Museveni Kaguta, to witness this momentous occasion. Meanwhile, until now, the outgoing president, His Excellency Kenyatta Uhuru, has not yet congratulated his deputy and former running mate upon his electoral victory. Kenya is also known to be a country with many firsts. It was the first country in Africa to nullify a presidential election, which was an indicator of a very independent judiciary, This time round, the same petitioner had made the same prayer and court dismissed it. And for those who followed the court proceedings, when dismissing the case, there were new vocabularies, or we had new vocabularies introduced, such as hot air, wild goose chase. We also heard about the forged affidavits by the petitioners. One of the significant takeaways from this petition is the manner in which the petition was swiftly dispensed. You will also recall that Kenyans have been litigating on almost every process of the electoral cycle. They did litigate on the verification of the register. They were again at it on the status of the awareness of the IEBC, which is the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission. They also did litigate on the campaign finance law and many others, to the extent that even on the voting day, there was a court ruling that came in the night about the use of whether manual voter register should be used, or the electronic one, or both. And the court had to rule that both of them should be used. That clearly shows you how the Kenyan court has been part of this process until the last day. We've also seen what it takes in terms of the judiciary of Kenya to support the democracy of that country. In today's episode, we would want to discuss and attempt to draw the parallels between Kenya's electoral arbitration system and Uganda's, and what lessons can we draw from Kenya. So, and this is where I want to take it up from. Let me start with Dr. Reza. First of all, what's your take from where you stand, from your standpoint, what's your take of all this development in Kenya, and given the way the court handled this process in relation to the petition, and what is it in for us as the country to learn from? Doctor, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Please proceed.
Very good. So thank you very much for inviting me to this space. It's always a privilege to participate in conversations such as this, because they are of such a powerful significance in the development of the rule of law and constitutionalism in Uganda. And so I am honored to be here. First of all, Kenya has some lessons. This process is not a process which is a do or die. That is actually possible to go through an election and follow the rules, minimize the loss of life, minimize inconvenience of the whole electoral process of the electorate, and then come up with a winner. Whether we agree with the final tally or not, this is democracy. And the former Prime Minister of Britain said, democracy is the worst form of governance, second to none. So almost saying that, yes, democracy may have its challenges, but it's the best form that we can have today. So when we see the Kenyan court participating in supporting electoral systems and electoral democracy, we have to applaud it. Agree with some of the decisions that have been made, but we have to applaud the fact that the Kenyan people are in agreement with the decisions of having a judiciary that can help arbitrate amongst opposing views. We acknowledge the decision of the court. We respect it, even if we do not agree with it. And they were even surprised that the court did not agree with them on all the 9 issues. That is what we mean by electoral democracy. Who knows what will happen tomorrow? I mean, who knew that the Maranga decision could happen, where you have a quashing of the whole election as happened before? that may not happen again or did not happen again, but still we have to upload the Kenyan judiciary for delivering, and we wait for the 21 days to elapse where we listen to the detailed ruling and have copies of the detailed ruling court. The process to a large extent was okay. Incidences of violence were very minimal. The whole world, I should say, at least Uganda being part of the whole world, was able to follow. It was a closely competed election. Any of the two candidates would have won. The media played their part. Nothing in the world is perfect, but we upload the fact that we are able to follow as the whole world, and that Kenyans did express their views, and that we knew it was very close, and that either of the candidates was bound to win, and of course it meant that the other one would lose. So we give kudos to the Kenyan people for what they've been able to achieve, and we hope that even our country can borrow a leaf from the successes that they have achieved in this season. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Daniel Rohweza. It's good to have you, Charity, on set. I did introduce you in your absentia, but Robert, hold it there. I'm going to come back to you. Let me quickly jump to Charity. I'm sure now you've settled in. Charity, I hope you can hear me. You observed the elections in Kenya, and probably you were privy to the first-hand proceedings on how the entire process went. But quickly, let's quickly fast forward. The results were contested, and we all, until now, we know the ruling. And next week, we'll be having the 5th president of Kenya, Dr. Ruto. But what do you make of all this? What stands out for you in the Kenyan elections, and specifically the proceedings of the Supreme Court in Kenya? What really stands out for you that Uganda can learn from?
Okay, so what stands out for me that Uganda should learn from is, one, that the rule of law does stand strong for the Kenya, a strong government without a strong judiciary, without the rule of law. So a strong government is reliant on the question of, do people respect the laws that exist, and do people respect the principles that govern processes? And we saw that in Kenya, the principles that govern democracy and elections. You see, the elections are just a component of democracy. A free media is a component of democracy. Right now in Uganda, you've seen a social media bill being passed. That bill is going to curtail journalists. That bill is going to make sure you can't even speak during times of elections. In Kenya, the social media was not shut down. The internet wasn't shut down. People were able to download forms. We are able to tally network and pick forms and add results for themselves, which you can't do in Uganda. And you see, the moment people have doubts, the moment there is gap in information, then that gap in information has to be filled at all costs by people's minds, people's thoughts, people's stories, and propaganda. But for Kenya, even the judges, they judged the case based on the facts that were on the ground. And indeed, that it was very difficult for the team of Raila Odinga to prove that those forms had been changed. If it had not been that these forms were freely accessed, everybody saw them, everybody knew how to add them for themselves, probably Raila's team then could have convinced the world that this is how they changed. the forms, and this is where they changed them from. But these forms were being uploaded right from the polling stations. Polling agents were across all polling stations. They received Form 34. They went back with that Form 34. And that Form 34 was in tandem with what was on the system. So there was no water to hold. And you can see that at the end of the judgment, even when Raila says, I reject the judgment, I reject the ruling, nobody can take him seriously, because they're asking themselves, okay, you should reject a ruling when you're premised on something, premised on beating, premised on the issues we saw in 2016. For example, Maraga, who Dr. Ruweza was talking about, he issued court orders. He did not issue recommendations. He issued orders to the IEBC to make the process of transmission, tallying, and counting very transparent. And so the man called Chebukati was following the ruling of David Maraga. That is how influential the judiciary can be on democratic and electoral processes. If we had a ruling that gave instructions to the Electoral Commission on what to do when managing our processes, and tell them to the letter on how to tally, count, and declare results, it would improve on our process.
Thank you so much, Charity. Councillor Okot, I'm going to bring you in here. You know very well that at some point the IEBC, the commission, was divided. I think 4 against 3. And at some point, the Supreme Court of Kenya, I think the Supreme Court of Kenya recommendations to improve democracy in this case seem to be challenged, because I want you to comment especially on the fact that the pleading on dysfunctionality of IEBC, which was being presented, because it was split at that point in time, that the chairperson went ahead to announce the results to avoid a constitutional crisis. And from where you stand, from your standpoint, what can we learn from this? Where you have a situation where of an IEBC commission split, but you have the chairperson standing and single-handedly does declare results and comes up within the proceedings of the court as an area of argument. What can we learn from this kind of situations moving forward for the country like Uganda?
Felix, thank you very much. Before I even respond to that, I need to remind ourselves that regular, free, and fair elections are a great component of a democracy. And of course, the principle of rule of law. Of course, now, some of the things that have been coming out from the IEBC have an issue of independence of an electoral management body. It is very important that you have an electoral management body that stands on its ground for whichever decision it takes. However, you now have a situation whereby some members of the commission do not want to agree with the final result that has been announced. But again, I will be guided by the words of that very court, of the Supreme Court of Kenya, whereby they were saying that, you see, you cannot detach yourself at the very end of the process just because you don't agree with the final result, yet you've been part of the whole process. It just does not make sense. But again, you also need to appreciate the fact that their commission, as opposed to ours here, has that level of independence such that members of the commission can even say that they do not agree with a certain result or what has been put out there. I don't see a situation whereby that happens in our Kampala. It would be unheard of. But again, Felix, there is something that is very common between Uganda and Kenya. From the 60s to date, there has not been an election that has gone uncontested. And the person that comes in to arbitrate is the judiciary. And that's where we need to emphasize the importance of having an independent judiciary all through. Because you see, again, you look at Kenya, on political questions, you realize that in the recent past, they have been very unpredictable, such that anyone can go into that court and do their best to see that they can get a result for themselves. I don't know whether you can say the same thing about our courts here in Uganda. So the independence of the judiciary comes in very handy, and that is something that we can learn from Kenya, ensuring that we have an independent judiciary. Because when you have such an institution being independent, then it has the capacity to check the executive and the legislature.
Thank you so much, Councillor Okot. I hope, do I have Doctor on set? Doctor, are you there? Did I lose Doctor? Because I wanted Doctor to make a comment, and partly Charity talked about it, the issue of where you have recommendations. You know, when it comes to Kenya, what they recommend is always put into effect to improve their democracy, and clearly shows how Kenya has constantly been improving their democracy. But when you come back here in Uganda, we tend to pick and choose what will work for us. And I would have loved the doctor to weigh in on why is Uganda is such a special case, and what lessons could we pick from Kenya to improve the situation back here in Uganda? Because on many occasions, like Councillor Court said, most of the election results, especially presidential election results, we end up in court. There's someone petitioning in court, and court does pronounce itself on these petitions. It does adjudicate, but usually we have recommendations that keep coming up and remain unresolved. And to be good to hear from Doctor, how should we, as a country, should we borrow from Kenya? And why are we in a situation whereby, for us, recommendations remain on paper, and if we have to choose, we choose what works for us conveniently and leave the other? Doctor?
Yes, thank you very much, Felix. I hope I can be heard.
Yes, you are clear. Please proceed.
But I hope that you are able to what I am saying. So yes, it is true that many of the elections in Uganda, especially presidential elections, have been contested. But it is envisaged that part of our democratic process is that elections can be contested by a person who is not satisfied with the result, which is a good thing in my view. It is better than going to use illegal means to resolve your differences. The fact that you can go to court, there is a fully constituted court with the mandate, and it is a tribunal that is competent to hear your views, for me is a good thing. And so go there, let them hear what you have to say, and let them decide. I think that is fine. It builds our jurisprudence. We are able to evaluate. We are able to pick lessons. For example, in 2016, when as lecturers of the School of Law, we participated as amicus curiae in the presidential petition filed by former Prime Minister Amama Mbabazi. First of all, people did not understand what amicus curiae is about. They did not even appreciate it. You know, there were people who were contesting against our application, saying that the court must choose its friends carefully. It cannot choose friends who seem to be apparently biased. And the court, the judgment by Justice Lilian Tibatima Ekirikubinza was a very good one, showing that, yes, you may have certain work you're doing as a lecturer and as an academic, but you can still come in as a friend of court in the circumstances that they laid down. That could never have been done if we had not gone and changed the law when it comes to amici curiae or amici curiae, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Because the law before that was that you cannot invite yourself to court. Court must first invite you. And they had decisions from Kenya. Now, Kenya has borrowed from that decision and has been able to admit, for example, the Law Society of Kenya as amicus in the petition that has just been concluded. So the jurisprudence that comes from these legal battles in the courtroom is good, and it helps us. The second thing that you can see as a result of these court proceedings is that the Attorney General may not be a party in an election process, but because the Attorney General's office is that implements what happens after the court has decided, then they are brought in as a party to be able to give the instructions that are needed in that case. So the legal process is very helpful in that regard. And now you can see Kenya has once again, through its Supreme Court, given us some more interesting legal terms. Because for me, the legal term that I'm even more interested about is when they referred to something as double hearsay. Because hearsay is relying on information as if you are relying on information and claiming it is true, whereas the person who perceived had or otherwise engaged with that information has not been brought before the court. Now the court is talking about double hearsay, which really is a real statement against the kind of evidence that was brought before them. And as you know, the equivalent, okay, you may not know, but the legal minds will know that under our section 101 of the Evidence Act of Uganda, which has a similar section in Kenya, he who alleges must prove. He who alleges must prove. And so, I said this in another forum, that there is a movie called Law Abiding Citizen, where one of the quotations by Jamie Foxx in that movie is, "It's not what you know, it is what you can prove in court." It's not what you know, it's what you can prove in court. So you may think that you know something, but can you prove it within the ambit of the court? So I think the contestation in the courtroom is very good. It guides us, it guides future proceedings, and it helps to improve our electoral democracy. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Reza. We're going to go for a short break, but when I return, I'll start with you, Charity, and I'll pick it up from where doctors left it on where did the side that was petitioning, where did it lose so that it could lose this petition? Let's go for a break.
Welcome, my people. A cup of coffee, please. There is tea, everything, snacks are on the way.
Yeah, thanks, but the reason that's why we are here, our people need to improve different services. We at least need an ambulance at every center ferry.
My sub-county is the farthest. We used to depend on the former MP's vehicle. But when he lost his elections, he took away his vehicle.
Of course.
So what does that mean?
Use your budget as a district to procure the ambulances.
Oh, if I could, I would. But unfortunately, government operates differently.
I'm saying, Chairperson, this is very serious and urgent.
Yes. And why are they called local leaders then?
Local government.
You people, who sent you here?
I know, of course. We are concerned citizens who are watching people dying every day.
We've lost our beloved ones just because of poor health services.
Something has to be done.
You are right. Something has to be done, and very fast.
Yes.
That's transport for you. Go back.
But
All your concerns are taken care of. I will handle.
But
Have a
Chairman,
safe journey.
Thank you so much.
but this man seems to undermine our cause as to why we're here.
No, don't misunderstand me. This is just transport, no strings attached.
Chairman, we came here to discuss and find solution to our problems. But it seems you don't want to engage with us. Let's go and mobilize people, and you will see how serious we are.
Good citizens, let us always hold our leaders accountable. Leadership is a service, not a privilege.
Contribute today at www.politicalfinanceafrica.org/donate.
You're still watching Acfim Talks, and welcome back from the break. Acfim Talks is brought to you by Alliance for Finance Monitoring, the political finance watchdog in Africa. And we're still discussing what lessons can we draw from Kenya, given the way they have managed the electoral process, adjudicating on the electoral matters. There was a petition contesting the results, and it was dispensed, and we have a president-elect come next week. We'll be having the 5th president of Kenya, Dr. Ruto. It's been a very interesting journey for Kenya, and does talk so much about the journey Kenya's democracy has taken. There's much to learn from as a country. Remember, we are, as democracy, we keep growing, we keep learning, and every country is at its different stage. But the most important thing is that we learn from others who have gone ahead of us. Before I went for the break, Doctor had touched something that I feel I should bring in here, Charity. Charity, having observed the elections, but also having followed the proceedings in court, I want you to comment on how prepared the legal team representing the petitioner was, but also what did they get wrong to lose the case? Did they have a solid case? Even starts from there. Did they have any solid case? Because when you look at the arguments and the counter arguments, from your perspective, and as someone who is an expert in these matters, give us your opinions on this case. Charity, are you there? Charity, unmute. I think Charity is muted. I can't hear you.
Somebody. Hello. Hello.
Yeah, Charity.
Hello.
Hear you.
You hear me now?
Yes,
Okay, so I was saying that the question was whether what was wrong with the legal team and whether they had a strong case or not, and what should they have done. And I think Daniel has been trying to explain the question of burden of proof. I'll come back to the question of burden of proof, but I felt I needed to underscore the fact that Uganda does not have a competent court. Dr. Daniel Ruheza said we have competent courts and that in 2016 we sat before a competent court. For me, I feel that for us to get to the point of saying we have a competent court, that court should not supply us hot air, which we had in Kenya. Kenya talked about hot air being supplied from the people that we are supposed to prove the burden of proof. Now, even us, the court supplied Ugandans hot air in 2016 because they gave recommendations. They did not give court orders. They did not give injunctions. They did not use their power, which they have. If they had given court orders, right now the Attorney General would have been held in contempt of court. But guess what the court did? It simply gave recommendations. It means we can continue in that mode forever. They will always run away from pronouncing themselves, and they will make flimsy excuses of why they cannot put their foot down. If they were going to be a competent court, in my view, they should have issued orders. They should, because court has power to have prohibitive, prerogatory, punitive orders. So what we need is for them to exercise that power that is given to them constitutionally and to protect citizens. Because to promote democracy and to promote participation of the citizens, the court must always protect the rights of citizens. And in this instance of 2016, they did not protect our rights. And for that matter, they were not a competent court. Now, back to the legal team of Raila. Did they have a strong case? I only think Raila's team could have had a strong case if they had spent time to invest in technology. One, to assess whether during the time of uploading the form, there was a possibility of a third arm changing those forms. Two, to prove that by the time the forms were getting into the IEBC center or place, they had already been adulterated by a third party. Now, they failed to prove that. Things of technology are extremely difficult to prove, except when you have highly technical people, because technology can be easily, you can have hackers, and it is possible that those forms could have even been changed if you have access. You see, there are layers of access. There are those who are encrypted, there are those who are not encrypted, there are those who have rights, but court does not decide cases on hearsay. Court decides cases on facts. So what the team of Raila did not do was to present facts. What they presented were issues, but beyond the issues, can you now prove beyond reasonable doubt? When they say prove beyond reasonable doubt, it means that even an ordinary person who sees can say, truly, there, you stole, you surely changed. But in this instance, even the ordinary people were saying, yeah, but when we looked at the server, the forms we see there are the very ones we see here. Even when they gave them the access to all the servers of IEBC, they told them, okay, produce for us only 2 or even 3 forms that have changed in character or anything, you know. The judges were trying to say, okay, nothing came out. Even the boxes they recounted, the results were the same. And also remember that the electoral observers had done PVT. Now, PVT is, they did a parallel voter tabulation. And in that PVT, still Ruto returned as the leader or the winner of this election. 3 observer groups all came out and said, look, according to our PVT, this is what we have. Now, if even the observers, this is what they are getting, IEBC, this is what it's getting, ordinary Kenyans who have tallied for themselves, they still got Ruto. So now, what was Raila's team going to prove? I had hoped that they had information, because they had agents across all their polling stations. When you have agents across polling stations and there are issues you've identified with the process of election, you take them down, but pick evidence. always in presidential petitions, and this is a general rule, in presidential petitions, the burden of proof is extremely high. And Dr. Ruweza told you that in the Evidence Act, Section 101, he who alleges must prove. It means that by 100% you have the jurisdiction, that you have the testimony, that you have the evidence, that you have the proof. If you don't have proof, then you have no case. And this is exactly what Raila's team did. They had no proof. And for that matter, they needed to have prepared better. They needed to have thought through the process better. And they needed to have invested highly in the question of a technical team that understands hacking and changing of systems, online systems and technology.
Thank you so much, Charity. Councillor Gott, I know you'd want to weigh in on that one, but as you weigh in on that one, I also have a question for you regarding how, especially looking at the composition of especially both teams, because when you look at both teams, you would find that in that court, there were no less than 3 governors, I think, elected, 4 senators elected. There were also four MPs, all elected as members of the legal team on either sides. And anybody who is looking at this beyond just the composition of the legal teams on both parties, you see that it speaks a lot about the involvement of Kenya's intelligentsia in elective politics at different levels. And as Uganda, how can we encourage more of the members of Uganda's intelligentsia to participate in elective politics? Because we all know what happens when it comes back home here in our area of elective politics, how the intelligentsia seems to have detached itself from participating in that process. How do we encourage them to move back in the fold, participate in this process, and deliver quality democracy, not just democracy, but quality democracy?
Thank you very much, Felix. First of all, to react to whether the legal team of Raila Odinga was prepared or not, Felix, preparing for a presidential election petition is not an easy task. In fact, what legal teams normally do is that they start collecting evidence from the first day of campaigns. Because the nature of evidence that is required is one that requires you to file affidavits. You need people to swear these statements. But for you to be able to have credible evidence, it means that you need to have prepared yourself very well. And I was looking at how previous legal teams here in Uganda were preparing. They started collecting affidavits during campaigns, not after the election. That way, you have the opportunity to present a credible case in court. But again, getting to the issue of burden of proof, when it comes to presidential election matters, it is above a balance of probabilities, meaning that it's above the standard in civil cases, but also it is not to the standard in criminal matters, which is beyond reasonable doubt. And that is where I have an issue with our Supreme Courts, because they have tended to treat presidential election petitions as though they are trials, normal trials, because these are presidential election petitions, not a normal trial whereby you have to follow the rules very strictly. But again, that leads me to 2 legal principles, and that is judicial restraint vis-a-vis judicial activism. Under judicial restraint, that is where you find most judicial officers doing their best to avoid questions of a political nature. And in this case, for a presidential election petition, that's how you will see courts emphasizing so much about evidence. But when you look at the laws that govern presidential election petitions in these countries, you will find that there is some power that is given to the judiciary to inquire into the processes. In other words, you do not only rely on the evidence presented by the petitioner or respondent, but you also need to do your own independent inquiry as a judiciary so that you breathe life into the provisions of the Constitution, but also other laws that govern elections, including the presidential election. So for me, that treatment that our judiciaries have sometimes given to presidential election petitions is where I have an issue with. Of course, we've had some judicial activists in Kenya. For instance, that election petition that was annulled, it has the element of judicial activism. But now, when you look at people that believe in judicial restraint, they tend to look at the future of the country after that election petition is either accepted or refused. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Council Court. Doctor, let me bring you in here. Did I lose Doctor? Okay, I think I lost Doctor in the process. Charity, are you there? Okay, I don't seem to be having Charity. Council Court, as the two get back on set. The issue of the intelligentsia, you saw yes. you saw the composition of both teams. You had yes. their elected MPs.
You see,
back home here, the intelligentsia seems to be steering clear of being part of elective politics. What is it that we can do to encourage the Uganda's intelligentsia, all so-called elites, participate in elective politics, and don't leave it to individuals, people we tend to look at as not necessarily elite or not necessarily the intelligent category, to lead us in the politics we want to see?
Felix, if you would allow me, before you get into the second question to my brother or court, George, allow me to just respond to, I think, what Charity had said regarding competence of the courts. I think I just wanted to guide that, you know, when you're dealing with competence, you're looking really at the rules of which come to jurisdiction. Do you have the power to adjudicate? Does the Constitution give you the power, and do you have the power to be able to adjudicate over an issue? If a magistrate court was adjudicating over a presidential petition, we would then say that that magistrate court does not have the competence to do so. We could disagree with the final decision of that Supreme Court, but if they tick the boxes on competence, that the people who are there have got the requisite qualifications and experience, we may not agree with, say, their previous work backgrounds, but do they tick the box? That is what I mean by competence. And also, when you see what happened with the Supreme Court decision of Uganda in 2016, they issued what we call structural interdicts. Structural interdicts are actually orders of the court, and they were requiring the person or the office of the Attorney General to implement certain things. So the courts actually this time went beyond mere recommendations, because the idea behind the amicus curiae application was to say, look, for the different times that matters regarding the elections have come before you, you have given recommendations, but recommendations have not been implemented. So what we are asking of you today, don't just give a recommendation, give a structural interdict, give an order requiring the Attorney General to do something and come back and report. So the Attorney General was specifically given certain instructions to do certain things. So the orders of the court were there. Indeed, that is why Kituo cha Katiba, Professor Sempebwa, and Professor Juko, after the 2-year limit that had been given to the Attorney General, went back and told the court that, look, the orders you gave have not been done, have not been implemented by the Attorney General. Can you please find the Attorney General in contempt of your order? And then the Attorney General had to give a response as to whether or not they had complied with the orders of the court. And I think that was a good advancement to our mere recommendations in that regard. I think George has spoken about the standard of proof versus the burden of proof. And maybe I just want to say that probably we need to go back to the court, and the court helps us appreciate, what does the Supreme Court do? Does the Supreme Court carry out a trial, or it carries out an inquiry? Because some of the lawyers have argued that we need an inquiry. Go beyond just sitting back and listening to receive evidence, and sit as an inquisitor to find out whether the process was done right. The judicial activists are saying, let us have an inquiry by the court, although the court to this extent has not yet agreed with them. And so maybe we need to either go back to Parliament and ask Parliament to review those words. Did Parliament want an inquiry, or did Parliament want a trial? That would help us to be able to finally sort it out. If it's an inquiry, then probably we even need to give the courts slightly more time to inquire into the election, basically to receive more than just the evidence by affidavits. Although now, even if you swear an affidavit before our courts, you can be called in and cross-examined on it. That is what I wanted to just clarify, or to respond to the observations that have been made by my sister Charity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Daniel Rohoeza. Council Court, back to you quickly, because our time is fast spent.
Yes. Yes. I know where you want us to lead on this one, but just to let you know that politics in Kenya pays a lot. People earn a lot of money, most especially the likes of the governors, MPs. They're earning a lot of money. So there is a serious incentive for even you, the elite, to go and participate in the politics of that country. So when you see the kind of politicians that we have here and those that we have in Kenya, still you'll realize that there is that aspect of money incentivizing their participation. But again, I think the elites here still have that fear of political competition. You will find that most of the people that contest here in Uganda are senior 6 dropouts. Most of them may have nothing to lose by contesting in an election. But you, Felix, and I, because we have a small office to protect here at Acfim, you still you feel you need to protect that as opposed to going to serve your country. That is what I would say briefly about it.
Okay, Charity, you're going to have the last word on this one. Just one question, a follow-up on that one. And I think we've had this discussion before, Charity. Why is the Uganda's intelligence here steering clear of participating in elective politics? That is one. Just your thoughts on that one, but also your thoughts on the fact that if you look at Kenya, for example, almost at every stage of the electoral cycle, you see there were petitions, and you would see the court dispensing these petitions within the time. Yet when it comes back to Uganda here, you have petitions that drag on and drag on, and you know justice delayed is justice denied. What can we learn from that quickly as we wrap up?
So I think that Kenya demonstrated to us that democracy can work as long as there is transparency in every process. I think the most important thing is to understand transparency in every process within the electoral cycle, including in the courts, because the courts themselves were also very transparent in their processes. There was nowhere at any one time, even when Kome said, my team has retired to write, people said, she has gone to a secret place to write. Then they said, yes, but she has gone to write what we have been hearing and what we have known. So there was nothing like anything was hidden, and there was information that was being kept away from the people. So it is very important that when it comes to issues of the people, as provided in Article 1 of our Constitution and runs through up to the judiciary in 126, that the judiciary will serve the people of Uganda. Everything they do should be for the people. Then transparency is a critical tenet that must be adopted. Now, when you ask about the intelligentsia, they fall in the category of they have been de-alienated from processes. If you go at Makerere University, for example, if you're an open thinker, if you're a person who is objective on many of these issues, they have choked those voices. They have thrown out professors. Professor Ndebesa is no longer there. There are many professors who have been frustrated because they came out to speak about processes. And so their friends are watching and saying, if they threw out my friend, what is the possibility that I will not be going? Most of them have chosen to go under the table. Those who have not gone under the table are talking on they are working on a thin thread. And so we need to improve our processes to allow for citizens to interact with the governance of their country as provided in Article 38 of the Constitution. Ugandan intellectuals who went and applied to Electoral Commission to observe the 2021 election were denied accreditation by the same commission. In Kenya, whoever wanted accreditation was cleared. There were over 150 observer groups. Can you imagine that? And in Uganda, they were selecting. These ones will talk well, these won't talk well, these ones will do this. Just let the process be. Let people be involved in their processes, and you will see democracy work better for everyone. Thank you, Felix.
So thank you so much, Charity.
Felix, a sentence to supplement.
Yeah, we are wrapping up. Make it short, please.
Just a sentence to add to what Charity has said. The 2010 Constitution in Kenya created a new dimension to make it possible for some of these things to happen. And therefore, we need to start thinking in that same direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'm going to bring this to a close. A very interesting discussion, but we can continue with this conversation on our social media platforms. We were discussing Kenya's presidential elections and what is the place of judiciary in the African democratization process. With me, I had Dr. Daniel Roweza, who is a law don at Makerere University, well-versed with constitutional law, international law, treaty law, and law of evidence. He's also the adjunct professor at Uganda Military Academy, Kabamba. I also had with me Charity Himbisiwe, who is the electoral democracy expert, did participate and observe those elections. He's also the current executive director at the Electoral Law Institute, also the former executive director of CEDU, commonly, that is Citizen Coalition for Electoral Democracy in Uganda. And lastly, I had Counsel Robert Okot, who is an advocate of the High Court, a member of the Uganda Law Society, East African Law Society, and also NETPIL, which is a network of public interest lawyers. He's done a lot around non-profit law and also political finance regulation, which was, interestingly, one of the key issues that was petitioned. I think it was petitioned during the last just concluded elections in Kenya. It's been a very interesting conversation. And till next time, same place. Bye-bye. Remain your host, Felix Kafuma. Take care. Have a nice week.